the inhumanity and terror of the Holocaust. For me, it isn't just history, it's personal. You see, I'm Jewish and my family roots are in Eastern Europe. Recently, I visited the place where my great-grandfather, a rabbi, was burned alive with his entire congregation in their synagogue by Nazi soldiers. Many of my ancestors were killed and buried in mass graves. Like I said, it's personal. With the exception of Poland, more Jews lost their lives in Ukraine than any other nation. The few who survived have grown old. They're poor, hungry, desperate, struggling to survive. They agonize over the horrors of the past as they despair in the face of the present. But there is a bright hope for them. In the future, a hope that you and I together can make possible. Hello, this is Mike Evans. Today I must bring to your attention a very personal and pressing situation that needs our attention. Right now, the nation of Ukraine is gripped by war, civil unrest, and violence. The situation is so dangerous and unstable that loss of life is becoming all too common. And the saddest fact of all of this is that the elderly and the young are the most affected. Citizens in the region are terrified and fear is overwhelming. In the city of Jerusalem, Ukrainian Jews have come to me begging for help for their family members, for their loved ones in Ukraine. I didn't understand the circumstances, but they explained it to me. They told me that Ukrainian Jews are desperate to get out of that area because they fear Russia. They say a second Holocaust is coming and Putin will be Hitler. They are absolutely horrified and they want their loved ones to come to Israel. They told me of people who are absolutely starving, things that I couldn't imagine that could happen. But right now I want us to go and see, because I went from Jerusalem to the Ukraine in answer to their prayers and behold it with my own eyes. Throughout the program, you'll hear my personal story, the history of my ancestors. It will move you to tears, yet tears are not enough. We must act now to pray for the Jews in the Ukraine in such an unstable time. We must act now to support them and ensure their needs are met. It is said those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. One of the first places I visited in Ukraine was a stark reminder of past atrocities committed against the Jewish population and a clear warning that we must act now to prevent such events from happening in the future. We're in Bratslav, Ukraine, and I want you to see something right here. It's a memorial. The memorial is to 250 children, all orphans. About a mile from here, they woke up about 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning. They were marched and beat all the way down to this river right here.
Там делали ополонку.
And in the river it was frozen, and because the winter was strong, it was very cold winter, and they made a hole in the ice.
Стали бросать их.
And they started to throw children in there.
Дети кричали,
Children were screaming and crying,
потопили всех детей.
and all the children were drowned there.
Когда началась война,
When the war started,
мне было 14 лет,
I was 14 years of age,
но я еще счастливчик.
but I'm a lucky one. Where Germans were,
Евреев не осталось.
basically no Jews were left.
Все были уничтожены.
All of them were exterminated.
Это не только у нас,
And it's not only here,
это по всей Украине.
it's like that all over Ukraine.
И когда кто-то подходил набрать немножечко воды,
And when people would come down to the river to get some water,
пулемет
then
трочил.
a machine gun would shoot.
И Буг
The
был
river
красный,
Buga was red with our blood.
Потом на детей они пуль не тратили.
They would not spare any bullets for the children.
Они брали детей,
They would take the children
головой об дерево,
and smash them against the tree with their heads,
разлетались мозги.
and their brains would smash out.
What you have to remember is that 1.5 million Jews were killed in Ukraine during the Holocaust. The magnitude of suffering and horror was unbelievable. The Germans created Jewish ghettos everywhere, and Jews were rounded up and forced into these small areas of cities and towns, living in unspeakable conditions while waiting to be sent to concentration camps or executed and thrown into one of more than 2,000 mass graves in the country. We're right here, and every one of these pins were Jewish ghettos in this little area right here. But more than Jewish ghettos, These became mass graves. Over 200,000 Jews were murdered right in this small area right here and dumped into mass graves, mothers and fathers and children.
Там уже копали большие рвы.
And then they would dig deep trenches.
И в эти рвы
And then in these
сбрасывали,
trenches they would put the
убивали.
dead bodies.
И кто был, если кто-то был с родных,
And
несчастных
if any
речах,
relatives were alive, then they would often carry their own dead people there to the grave.
And without exception, all the survivors talked about their lack of food and how they nearly starved to death.
Каждый, кто мог,
Everyone who
они
could,
отдавали то, что имели,
they would give what they had
чтобы получить кусок хлеба.
to get a piece of bread.
мы были раздетые,
And we were
разутые,
basically naked.
голодные,
We were very hungry.
опухшие.
And we were swollen because of our starvation.
I found it absolutely deplorable that these precious people suffered so much and are still suffering today. The poverty I saw among the Holocaust survivors in Ukraine was unbelievable. The need was overwhelming, but I had to do something. So I bought as much food as I could for these men and women who had so little to sustain them on a day-to-day basis. I was reminded of images of the Jewish ghetto as I walked through crowded, trash-filled areas and up many flights of filthy stairs to reach small and threadbare apartments. I couldn't help but wonder how these people, all elderly and many physically challenged, managed to even get to and from home. You know, this is such a beautiful lady here.
Yeah.
Here's a lady that's alone,
Yeah.
that lost her eyes during
Спасибо.
the Holocaust. And,
Спасибо вам, что вы уделяете нам
Thank
внимание.
you for paying attention to us. And I'm thankful that now I have some care. Because I didn't have it before. And let me tell you, I don't know how I would survive right now if I didn't have this care. All through the war I was in ghetto. And I saw it all back there. And I didn't know that it would come back and it would be tough times again. We never expected that this would happen, that Russia would attack us.
In the city of Jerusalem and in Haifa, Israel, we are helping more than 2,000 Ukrainian Jews. They're all Holocaust survivors. They have numbers on their arms, and they have unspeakable stories. They're forgotten, they're alone. But as we've been helping them with food, feeding them, and caring for them, they started reaching out to me, sharing a story of their brethren, of their relatives, of their nation. And they shared it in tears. Number one, they told me these people are in poverty, unspeakable poverty. They told me their people are crying and begging they want to go to Israel and live there. They told me their people are frightened to tears of Russia and Putin. They said another Holocaust is coming. This time the man's name is Putin, not Hitler. Their people are terrified, and they're alone, and they're poor, and they have no way to get to Israel if we don't help them. I can't sleep ignoring these people. I have to do something. And that's why I'm sharing this with you. By the way, I saw a little doll in a shop, just a little tiny doll. It was an angel made by Ukrainian women. As I held that little doll in my hands, I thought, you know what? I need to be that angel. Other people need to be that angel of love. They need to reach out in love and help these precious people.
When Russian troops rolled into Crimea to liberate the province, an ongoing war broke out that continues to this day, leaving waves of terror and desolation. Hatred of the Jewish people is still very real, and nowhere is this a greater problem right now than in Ukraine. As a result, thousands of Jewish people are living in devastating poverty. The streets are full of orphaned and abandoned children living in dangerous conditions. They are hungry, many are sick and cannot afford medicine. Some are dying. When you stand with Dr. Mike Evans today, you're becoming part of a life-saving work that's making an impact that will last for generations. Your sacrificial step of faith is helping to fulfill a mandate found in Isaiah 58:7 to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter. When you see the naked, to clothe him. By taking this step together with Dr. Evans today, you'll become part of a large group of people from around the world who care enough to do something beyond themselves, who have chosen to do something great for God. However, time is growing short. If the poor Jewish people of Ukraine, especially the Holocaust survivors, are ever going to see Christian love in action, we must act now before it's too late. For your generous gift of only $60, you'll be helping Dr. Mike Evans and the Jerusalem Prayer Team provide a bag of food for 6 Jewish families who are in desperate need. Each bag of this nutritious and healthy food will help feed a family. It will fill a small child's belly and even bring comfort to an elderly Holocaust survivor. As a very special thank you for your generous gift of $60 or more, Dr. Mike Evans will send you a beautiful handcrafted angel like the one he found in Ukraine. It's a symbol of the love and the hope that God wants to share with every one of His children. It also represents the generosity of your heart as you become an angel of hope and blessing. For your gift of $100 or more to bring life-saving food to 10 impoverished families in the Ukraine, you'll receive the handcrafted angel and the blessing of Aaron prayer shawl. This prayer shawl is crafted after the tallit, and it represents the blessing and protection of God on your life. It features the Aaronic blessing, "The Lord bless you and keep you and make His face to shine upon you," in both Hebrew and English. And remember, as the situation there continues to get worse, many of these Ukrainian Jews are desperately trying to escape Russia's aggression and immigrate to Israel, to go home to a place of safety. The Jewish Authority will pay their airfare, but it costs $200 per person to travel to make a first trip to visit the Israeli embassy in Ukraine and apply for the required documents. It's impossible for these people to afford this without your help. When you call today with your very special gift of $1,000 or more, you'll help an entire family of 5 realize their dream of calling Israel home. As his way of saying thank you, Dr. Evans will send you the handcrafted angel, the blessing of Aaron prayer shawl, and a stunning museum-quality genuine Yemenite shofar, adorned with silver, which you'll be proud to display in your home or office. Because of the uncertain future facing the Ukraine, these doors of opportunity could close at any moment. We must not delay in our response as we answer the call of God in Genesis 12:3 to bless the Jewish people. Call right now and become an angel of hope too, and a blessing to someone in the Ukraine who needs your help.
In a moment, I'm going to share with you my personal story in Jerusalem. The story that I heard from my mother at the age of 4 when she said Christians kill Jews, Christians hate Jews. And she told me her grandfather, a rabbi, was burnt to death in his synagogue with almost 2,000 people as it was lit on fire, and they screamed, "Christ killers." She told me this story in such pain. I had never been to that area. It's called Belarus. In order to get there, I had to go through the Ukraine. And when I went to Belarus and saw the suffering of my own people, I realized I cannot close my ears and my eyes today to their cries, and neither can you. Come with me now to Jerusalem and let me share with you my personal story. My father was an anti-Semite. He hated Jews. Yes. He was a Christian who hated Jews. My father married a Jew, my mother. When he married her, she didn't know he was an anti-Semite. They were in love, they were young. She married him. But then she woke up with 7 children to realize her husband hates Jews. But not only did he hate Jews, my father had an obsession that my mother had an affair with a Jewish man, and that the boy she gave birth to was a bastard, was not her son, but was a product of a Jew. And he hated that little boy. He hated him so much he began beating him at the age of 4. He was locked in a canning cellar like a dog under the house. He was beat with coat hangers and cords and fists and boots because his father didn't believe he was his child. And he hated that child. Hated him severely. That child was me. At the age of 4, I was watching cartoons on television, and all of a sudden, Billy Graham came on. My mother switched it off, and she said this to me: "Never watch that again. Billy Graham, the Pope, and Adolf Hitler are all Christians. Christians kill Jews. Christians hate Jews. Jesus died, don't dig him up." My mother had tremendous hardness in her heart against Christians, and I'm going to tell you why. I drove from Ukraine into Belarus on what was a very personal journey, about 60 miles north of Chernobyl, in the town of Mozart, where my mother's family lived, and where I was about to confront the truth about my past.
It was November 1941, and in 3 days, 6,000 Jews were slaughtered out of this Jewish ghetto. We're right here where the Jewish ghetto was, where my grandparents were. All the little tiny houses and Jews stuffed into them with barbed wire, with Nazis with dogs barking, and they didn't have food, and their life was a living hell before they killed them, before they drowned them in the river, before they dug holes and buried over 2,000 of them, tortured them, raped them, putting bayonets through heads of babies. Might not sound like something you can relate to, but I can, because these were my relatives.
As I explored the area, it seemed that everywhere I turned, there was a story to be told about the atrocities committed against the Jewish people.
This is the river where 700 Jewish people in Mozart, my family members, many of them, were drowned to death by the Nazis, murdered for only one reason, being Jews. If this river could talk to you right now, it would cry out, and it would tell you about precious little lives that were destroyed while the world was silent.
In Belarus, just as in Ukraine, there are hundreds of mass graves commemorated by memorial markers. I visited a number of these sites and was overwhelmed by one in particular, where more than 32,000 men, women, and children have been killed and buried. My heart was broken by all that I saw in Ukraine and Belarus. But one of the most emotionally devastating moments of my life took place as I walked down a road near Vishneva toward a location I'd heard about but never imagined I'd actually visit.
Visualize this for a moment. The Nazis have come into this little town, 1941, 1942. There's a synagogue here where Jewish people came to worship, mothers and fathers and children, the girls and the boys. Every week they came here to worship, but not this week. And my mother, at the age of 4, started telling me about the story. She said my grandfather was a rabbi. Was in his synagogue, and the Christians, my mother said, the Christians boarded it up and screamed, "Christ killer." And the people that were jammed in the synagogue were screaming. And they lit it on fire and they burnt them all to death.
I understand why my mother had such pain in her, because I felt all of that pain. Every bit of it I felt this week in Belarus. I'm grateful for people who stand with the Jewish people, who bless the Jewish people, because I am a product of an anti-Semite who hated the Jewish people. My father was an anti-Semite, and he claimed to be a Christian. He claimed he sang songs on Sunday. He went to church, but he hated the Jewish people. This was my father, and he hated this one Jew, me, the most. And I cried out and said my first prayer. My first prayer was not a holy prayer. It was not a happy prayer. It was a prayer of anger and rage. The prayer was, why, God, why was I born? And as I said that, in my terrible state, all of a sudden, the room lit up brightly. Now, please understand something. I did not believe in God, and I certainly did not believe in Jesus. Jesus was the farthest thing from my mind because of what my mother had been through and my hypocrite father. There was no way I would believe in Jesus. Impossible. But when I said, God, why was I born? The light shined so brightly I couldn't stand it. I put my hands over my face and I peeked through my fingers. When I peeked, I saw 2 nail-scarred hands. And then I saw eyes, smiling eyes.
And then he spoke, and he said 3 words. First one was son. I had never heard the word son, never. Then he said, I love you. I had never heard the word I love you. And then he said, I have a great plan for your life. And he left. Listen, one word from God can change your life forever. You're getting a word from God right now that can change your life forever. That one word from God changed my life forever, forever. My speech impediment was gone. My stomach ulcer was gone. All my fears, I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid of death. I was afraid of heights, of people, of everything. All my fears were gone. I didn't know what had happened to me. I didn't know of healing, yet I was healed. I didn't know of deliverance, yet I was delivered. I didn't know of called, yet I was called. Everything had been transformed in one moment by the power of a living God.
And that transformation started him on a journey of more than 40 years, traveling the world in support of the Jewish people and the nation of Israel, defending them against injustice and persecution. Dr. Mike Evans has dedicated his life to demonstrating to these people that Christians who love Jesus, real Christians like you, are nothing like those whose actions so horrified his mother and resulted in the deaths of many of his own family members. When he visited elderly Jews in Ukraine, when he saw their poverty and heard their trembling voices describe the fear they're living under as Putin's Russian troops occupy portions of their land, Dr. Evans felt a new passion well deep inside his being to do everything he could to make sure history never repeats itself for these precious people who have already lived through the horrors of the Holocaust and the cruelty of Hitler. And of course, in Belarus, visiting the site where members of his family lost their lives, this passion became stronger than ever, with an urgency that he has to do something now to make a difference.
This isn't a big memorial, it's very small, but it represents several thousand people. And it represents a Jewish synagogue that was burnt to the ground by the Nazis, and precious lives were killed and ended. If you wonder why I do what I do, why I ask for your help, why I've been defending the Jewish people and the nation of Israel for over 40 years, this is the reason why. It all began at the age of 4 with the words of my mother. The horrible words that came out of her mouth, out of her pain and her sorrow. This is the reason why. This is the reason why. We need you to stand with the Jewish people. This is the reason why we're asking you to care and reach out to them in every possible way to comfort the Jewish people, because there was no one here to comfort them when they needed comfort. There was no one to hear the cries of my relatives in the 30s. When my great-grandfather, a rabbi, was burnt to death in his synagogue with his congregation, no one heard the cries. When my aunts and uncles were murdered in mass graves, no one heard the cries. But when I visited the spot where they died, and I saw a little shop with an angel in it made by Ukrainian women, I realized that I could be an angel, hearing the cries of suffering Jews right now, and you could too. I had no idea of the suffering that was going on with my people in Ukraine. I had no idea with the poverty. I've never seen so many people in abject poverty, absolute unspeakable poverty. No, never saw anybody in America living like that. Nor did I realize that the Jews are begging and pleading that they can go to Israel and be safe. That's why I'm asking you to help today. I'm asking you to be that angel. Be that person that can answer a prayer, hear a cry. They weren't there for my relatives in the 30s, but I want to be there today for them. The appeal came from Jews, Ukrainian Jews in Israel, to me to go. I went. And now I'm making an appeal to you to go. Please go. Go with your gift today. Hear their cries. Help
help them have food and medicine. Provide for them so they can return to the land of Israel. You can be that angel. Thank you.
When Russian troops rolled into Crimea to liberate the province, an ongoing war broke out that continues to this day, leaving waves of terror and desolation. Hatred of the Jewish people is still very real, and nowhere is this a greater problem right now than in Ukraine. As a result, thousands of Jewish people are living in devastating poverty. The streets are full of orphaned and abandoned children living in dangerous conditions. They are hungry, many are sick and cannot afford medicine. Some are dying. When you stand with Dr. Mike Evans today, you're becoming part of a life-saving work that's making an impact that will last for generations. Your sacrificial step of faith is helping to fulfill a mandate found in Isaiah 58:7 to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter. When you see the naked, to clothe him. By taking this step together with Dr. Evans today, you'll become part of a large group of people from around the world who care enough to do something beyond themselves, who have chosen to do something great for God. However, time is growing short. If the poor Jewish people of Ukraine, especially the Holocaust survivors, are ever going to see Christian love in action, we must act now before it's too late. For your generous gift of only $60, you'll be helping Dr. Mike Evans and the Jerusalem Prayer Team provide a bag of food for 6 Jewish families who are in desperate need. Each bag of this nutritious and healthy food will help feed a family. It will fill a small child's belly and even bring comfort to an elderly Holocaust survivor. As a very special thank you for your generous gift of $60 or more, Dr. Mike Evans will send you a beautiful handcrafted angel like the one he found in Ukraine. It's a symbol of the love and the hope that God wants to share with every one of His children. It also represents the generosity of your heart as you become an angel of hope and blessing. For your gift of $100 or more to bring life-saving food to 10 impoverished families in the Ukraine, you'll receive the handcrafted angel and the blessing of Aaron prayer shawl. This prayer shawl is crafted after the tallit, and it represents the blessing and protection of God on your life. It features the Aaronic blessing, "The Lord bless you and keep you and make His face to shine upon you," in both Hebrew and English. And remember, as the situation there continues to get worse, many of these Ukrainian Jews are desperately trying to escape Russia's aggression and immigrate to Israel, to go home to a place of safety. The Jewish Authority will pay their airfare, but it costs $200 per person to travel to make a first trip to visit the Israeli embassy in Ukraine and apply for the required documents. It's impossible for these people to afford this without your help. When you call today with your very special gift of $1,000 or more, you'll help an entire family of 5 realize their dream of calling Israel home. As his way of saying thank you, Dr. Evans will send you the handcrafted angel, the blessing of Aaron prayer shawl, and a stunning museum-quality genuine Yemenite shofar, adorned with silver, which you'll be proud to display in your home or office. Because of the uncertain future facing the Ukraine, these doors of opportunity could close at any moment. We must not delay in our response as we answer the call of God in Genesis 12:3 to bless the Jewish people. Call right now and become an angel of hope too, and a blessing to someone in the Ukraine who needs your help.